Continuation of the previous video. Religion sustained and encouraged being the hope that gift, sacrifice, obedience, and loyalty could appease nature's judgment and discrimination. So, in support of a supernatural view of events, religion has relied on two basic concepts that arose early in human history: the soul and God. According to hypothesis proposed by psychologists and anthropologists, the idea that the soul is separate from bodies originated in the separation of mind from reality in dreams. Some theologists sought a scientific argument from the non-material nature of the soul or the personality, claiming that intellectual process cannot have a material origin. Today, such concerns are reflected in research whose goal is to understand consciousness, which embodies the awareness of a self that is aware of itself, looks out at a world that is it perceives and responds to. Then evolution and religion. Darwinism had an especially dramatic impact on religion. To many of Darwin's religious and contemporaries and to others since on the origin of species and the descent of man raised issues of momentous importance to the general public. Darwinism was at least as much as religious as a scientific concern. Darwin was painfully aware of this and pointed out at least two discoveries that could refuse his theory. An intervention of the evolutionary consequence, such as evidence of humans in the Paleozoic or Mesozoic era, finding the same species in two separate geographical locations when their presence did not result from migration between these areas. No such evidence have been found in the century and have since Darwin theory was published. Understanding the role that evolution plays in modern life require understanding how religion and evolution interacted. The two views were the basis for confrontation of a debate less than a year after publication of The Origin of Species, a part of the ongoing public discussions generated by the book Bishop Samuel Wilberforce of the Church of England attacked Darwinian theory as incompatible with the Bible. Coached by the religious comparative anatomist Richard Owen, the bishop attempted to destroy Darwin's theory through scientific arguments. So, Wilberforce aimed at his final point directly at Thomas Huxley when he asked whether it was through his grandmother that Huxley claimed to descend from a monkey. The weight of Huxley's response recounted a few months later in a letter to his friend Richard has often been quoted. If then, said I, the question is put to me whether I rather be a miserable ape for a grandfather or a man highly endowed by nature and possessed by great means by influence and yet who employs these faculties and this influence for the mere purpose of introducing ridicule into a grave scientific discussion. I unhesitatingly affirm my preference for the ape. Such religious attacks were worldwide, frequent, harsh, and almost always focused on the same points. Religious opponents accused Darwin of seeking to do away what all ideas of God, to produce in their readers a misbelief of the Bible, to displace God by the utter actions of vagary and erring action, to destroy humanity's unique status. In the most sensitive area of all life itself, Darwinian evolution offered different answers to religious claims of why life's important events occur. Darwin's work made clear that society no longer needed to believe that only the actions of the supernatural creator could explain biological relationships. Darwin presented a nature of continual charge, unpredictable events, and unrelenting competition for resources among living creatures with no obvious guidance. To religious believers, natural selection substitute waste for economy by treating life as a constantly expandable commodity. For many, it was difficult to transition from regarding the operation of nature in understandable human terms to its operation in terms of the evolutionary opportunism expressed by the competition or reproductive success. The philosopher Immanuel Kant, who took an evolutionary approach to cosmology and to the origin of solar system, found it at times aberrant to admit the species could evolve, describing such notions as idea of so monsters and instincts before them. Society has held to both evolution and religion because they serve different needs. With the exception of some fundamentalists whose views are discussed in the following section, religion essentially withdraws from the domain of biological evolution, leaving both the origin of species and the origin of humans to evolutionary biologists and anthropologists. Creationism and intelligent design. Fundamentalist religious groups were generally not accepted the uneasy relationship between evolution and religious institutions that exist in the Western world. Some Judeo-Christian groups completely reject evolutionary explanations for biological events. That said, a wide spectrum of views is found across religious groups, from special creation and the denial of evolution at one end of the spectrum to acceptance of evolution to the other. Usually discuss this extending from young Earth to old Earth creationism. The origin of such groups within the society date back at least to the early 90s, with strong roots among economically threatened tenant farmers and small landholders, especially in the United States South and Southwest. Sociologists have suggested that believing in the literal truth for the Bible, rivalism, and other aspects of fundamental religion helped away of these rural groups defined their way of life against domination and control of the more intelligent but exploitative method and social economic establishments. Monkey tails. Whether their initial motivations, fundamentalist groups were successful in pursuing anti-evolution goals in the South and Southwest during the first few decades of the 20th century. By the end of 1920s, fundamentalists had introduced anti-evolution bills into a majority of United States legislators and had passed some in various southern states. The most famous confrontation between evolution and Bible creationism during that period was the 1925 trial of school teacher John Thomas Scopes, convicted of ignoring the ban against teaching evolution in tennis schools. Scope, who had earned a law degree from the University of Kentucky in 1924, moved to Dayton, Tennessee, a football coach at Berea Country High School. Occasionally, he filled in as substitute for regular teachers, a role that placed him in the center of what became known as the Scops monkey trail. While substitutions in a biology class, he taught evolution. The case of the state of Tennessee was placed in the hands of William Jennings Bryan. Although many biologists felt that the Scops trail essentially defended the intelligent intellectual validity of the creationist position, creationists apparently lost little ground in these regions and had an impact on the public education far beyond the South and Southeast. Despite the overwhelming scientific evidences for evolution as a natural process, some religious groups under to creation have developed intellectual design as a purported scientific alternative to evolution. Intelligent design is later day creationism because it relies on supernatural beliefs rather than scientific explanations. Design is not science. Religious arguments have explanatory power with respect to belief systems, not science. But they have not scientific explanations and should be not be confused with or regarded as scientific explanations. Many intellectual threats lead to the modern theory of evolution, a theory that recognizes that Earth is ancient, that there is a common inheritance and a universal way of life, and that natural events can be explained by undiscoverable natural laws. Essential to our understanding of evolution is that groups of organisms are bound together by their common inheritance. The past has been long enough for inherent changes to accumulate, and arguably most essential of all, that discoverable biological processes and natural relationships among organisms provide the evidence for the reality of evolution. It took a long time to weave these threads into an evolutionary tapestry, and the richness and beauty of which we hope this presentation of the evidences by far for, and the fact of evolution will enable you to appreciate more clearly.